Guys, I hope you're good. This is a video that I have been putting off making for quite some time. As you can probably tell by the title, I'm going to be talking about boat related crime, including burglaries. So the reason that I've been a bit reluctant to make this video is that I don't want it to turn into a how-to for any potential burglars out there. One of the most common questions that I'm asked when people find out that I live on a boat is whether it's safe. And what I think they're really asking is whether I feel safe. So I'm gonna try as best I can to answer both of those questions. I suppose one of the reasons that I get asked that question a lot is that typically in the past, canal towpaths have been a little bit of a magnet for scallywags. They're out of the way, there's no chance of troublemakers being seen by passing police cars, and canal side property is a fairly new trend, so there's a lot less chance of your criminal activity being disturbed by nosy neighbours. Generally, people who would be witnessing incidents happening along the towpath would just be passing by, and it's really easy to forget that it's only in the last 15 years that people have really been carrying mobile phones. When I was growing up and I'd go down by certain canals, it wasn't uncommon to see people buying, selling, taking drugs, or getting up to a little bit of hanky-panky. Towpaths are not lit, so going there after dark was an absolute no-no, although I probably broke that rule on a few occasions. However, since there has been such an influx of boats into London, much of that behaviour has stopped. Although the circumstances that make that an appealing spot for criminal activity are still there. If you're going to mug someone, especially after dark, somewhere with no lighting, no neighbours, no traffic, little footfall and loads of bridges and bushes to hide in, is perfect. Many boaters won't know the area that they're staying in that well, and that makes them particularly vulnerable. The one time in my life that I was almost mugged, it turned out that I knew the mugger, so we just ended up having a chat instead. When you know an area, you're more likely to know people, and you know what are the bad spots to avoid, and you can make that calculated risk as to whether or not to take a shortcut. And that's not a privilege that a lot of boaters have. I'm on a secure mooring, we've got CCTV, we've got lots of gates to get into the place, and I know the area, so I feel safe, and I must give off a more confident air about me when I'm walking around even late at night. But that's going to be so much more difficult if you're only staying in a place for 2 years. And on a towpath there isn't anywhere else to run. If you get into trouble, it's not like being on the street or even in a park. And it's that isolation that I think makes boats an attractive target for burglars as well. I'm not going to go into any great detail about ways to secure your boat. There are lots of options, however, they are limited in comparison to a house. So just because the circumstances do exist, are you actually more likely to be the victim of a crime if you're a boater? Boaters love to talk and to tell each other's stories, and something that the boating community, especially in London, has fully embrace with equal levels of passion and frustration is social media. There are countless Facebook groups for everything boat related that you can think of in London and further afield. Since moving on to my boat almost 2 years ago, it seems like I can't log on to any of those groups without reading stories about crime, muggings, burglaries, boat thefts, even deliberate sinkings. It seems to be happening all the time, and the problem just seems to be getting worse and worse. There are certain no-go areas very close to me, and when I think about going out on longer cruises, I dread the prospect of having to leave my boat unattended, and cannot see the appeal at all of staying in London. Why would anyone do that, I keep saying. But a lot of people don't have a choice but to do that, and I am the first person to scream from the rooftops, do not believe everything you read on Facebook, because it doesn't paint a full picture. Obviously, posts about crime are going to generate more interest. They'll receive more interaction, which means we'll see more of them, and we're more likely to remember them. And another thing that really worries me is that because there's so much attention in the media about boaters and how many people are living on boats, especially in London, then that might be drawing attention to people who in the past might have not realised that people do actually live on boats. And obviously when people are living on a boat, they're gonna have valuables on board. And another thing that does worry me is that with so much stuff being put on social media, for example, it's not uncommon for people to advertise names and locations of empty boats, or for people to talk about how they were robbed, how the burglars gained access, things like that. Perhaps that could be giving people ideas or opportunities that might not have existed in the past. However, if you do look at statistics, you were much more likely to be burgled in the 80s and the early 90s than you are now. In fact, 2017 saw burglaries at a record low. Unfortunately, there are no official statistics that differentiate between boat burglaries and house burglaries. So it's difficult to tell if you are more likely to be robbed if you're living on a boat. Because of that, the Canal and River Trust do urge anyone who has been a victim of boat or towpath crime to report it to them as well as to the police, so they can gather their own data, and whatever anyone might think of them, it's certainly not in their interest for crime to be taking place on their patch. But crime is such a difficult issue to tackle. Crime rates have increased over the last few years, and at the same time, budget for policing has been slashed massively. There are so fewer police officers on the streets, and naturally they need to concentrate all of their resources on more serious crimes. But if boaters and towpath users do report all crimes, then hopefully that might redirect some of the police resources. But until then, boaters are coming up with their own ways to fight back against crime. There are organised patrols around a lot of the hotspots, and boaters have actively been getting involved with local policing and neighbourhood watch. People share a lot of information and recommendations on boat and personal security. Groups of boaters have organised and attended self-defence classes together, and it's not uncommon for people to moor together as a group or to offer to walk each other back to their boats after dark. And going back to the social media, most of the reports that I see are from other people who have noticed that their neighbours have been burgled. And when I bought my first house, we were burgled within a couple of months of being there. My neighbour actually saw it happen, but they didn't tell us until the next day when we'd woken up and realised that someone had been in the house. And at the time I just kind of accepted that as being normal, but I can't imagine that that would be the norm for boat people. And for me, that will always be the best thing about living on the water, is that sense of community. You can't always prevent bad things from happening, but I know if something bad did happen, that I would have people around me to help put it right again. So, do I feel safe on my boat? Yes, I do. And if I didn't, then I would know how to fix that. Thank you so much for watching. Let's keep it really positive in the comments. Share your stories with me of great experiences you've had with your communities. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please make sure you do. Come back next week where I do something very, very silly. Right, bye for now.